Hey everybody, it's Harbinger von Sinn. Due to the sensitive nature of the topics we're discussing tonight, listener discretion advised. Hello and good evening. It's Harbinger von Sinn here with the Intellectualist podcast, and I am joined this evening by two of our stellar outcasts who populate our server, Hyral
G'day.
and TopHat.
G'day. Oh, sorry. Cheerio? What am I supposed to say? No, hello there. Good evening. Good evening.
Thank you for joining us tonight. We're glad that you guys came back. We have some quality stuff for you tonight. Our topic is going to be digital dating. Basically, what we'll be covering tonight is like past, present, and future, right? The past conceptions of online dating and how that kind of shaped what was available, presently, what's going on, and how this can change things in the future throughout many landscapes. So let's just like get right into it. Tell me a little bit about your personal experiences with online dating, either through apps or Discord or randomly in like a YouTube. Hyral, you can go first.
I predominantly used OkCupid, although I've had some experience with like Plenty of Fish and a few other variants. And to be honest, I used to call it anic dating because it seemed like the likelihood was that I would end up in some sort of catastrophic date. But I think that's as much to do with my own sort of personal selection process as anything. But I think typically I've loved it because I think this is something that we're probably going to talk about a lot. But it's enabled me to meet a range of people that I probably wouldn't rub shoulders with ordinarily. Like, I think that's the beauty of online dating, is that if you consider sort of like you traditional sort of like analog dating, I suppose, you kind of restricted to like your place of work, your bar, your friendship circles and stuff like that. And so you can kind of scan the internet and sort of like engage multiple people often at the same time and develop like rapport and sort of see where each of them go. It's like an immensely more efficient sort of process for whittling down the millions of potential sort of candidates for romantic interaction and finding the people that you click with the most. But
Yeah, and have you had like good experiences or like really strange ones? If we have stories, we will tell later. But if you have strange ones or
I've definitely had good experiences. I think one of the sort of like the aspects of dating in general is that like I'm not necessarily somebody who's looking to you meet people who the point of dating for them is to sort of like, it needs to last forever. They're looking for someone to marry, essentially, and anything less than that is kind of like a waste of time to them. I think one of the things I've enjoyed about online dating is that it's allowed me to meet like a pretty broad variance of people who it might have ended amusingly, catastrophically, potentially, but I still learnt a lot of things from those relationships. And, even the stories are worthwhile half the time if we get to those.
I can wait for those. How about you, TopHat?
I'd probably say the biggest kind of apps going in the UK would be your kind of like Tinder and Bumble are the biggest ones. I would say probably my first experience though would be even more professional websites were kind of still had this kind of undertone or it wasn't like quite LinkedIn, but there's another like creative website I'm on, and there's a lot of kind of profiles that really look very similar to like dating profiles, I must admit, rather than say visual artwork. So I think this has probably always been around pretty much all areas of the net. This hasn't kind of exploded out of nowhere, has it? And dating or relationships or networking were never a part of, say, the internet. They were obviously hand in hand, either behind the scenes or now more obviously. But generally, I would say on the personal front, I've only really seen kind of Tinder for a short time. And I must admit, I have used it a couple of times if I've like traveled or I want to like know cool places, or maybe someone wants to drive me around the city. Is like really awesome. Like I love getting chauffeured around.
Well, I mean, a lot of the times people, it's a date. These are dating apps, right? Dating applications and dating websites. But a lot of the times you can find things there that you didn't expect, like apparently somebody who wants to chauffeur you around. Um, so I want to talk about a little bit of the past. So back in the day, um, online dating was like, if you're like, if you're going out with like these maybe people, right? I'm calling them maybe people because you could literally be being catfished. If you're going out with these maybe people online, back in the day, it's seen as something that's like deplorable, really. Yeah, it's definitely less socially acceptable. It's, I don't know, it's almost seen as like something that's like desperate, right? How do you guys feel about that? Like, I know both of you are slightly old enough, maybe, to have experienced maybe the tail end of that. So what does
Yeah,
that look like to you back in the day?
I remember it being like a dirty secret. Couples would sort of be reluctant to admit where they'd met. It was on the internet because it's sort of the taboo at the time was that that would necessarily like devalue whatever connection they'd forged on the basis of, as we're saying, like desperation. Like, okay, you were just looking for anybody to end up with. You'd ended up there. Like that was the perception. It was like you've struck out in reality, so you've gone online.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously that's sort of like no longer the case.
Yeah.
I would probably agree with that statement of a bit taboo, or it doesn't seem. I'm trying to think of the element it must kind of take away, or is it some kind of like magical element, or is it just a peculiar story? Is it this
Mm-hmm.
like meeting of eyes or something? That the
Mm-hmm.
first time you maybe, it's not quite the backdrop, even if it
Mm-hmm.
might be the person. When you kind of paint the picture, maybe it's not quite right at the start. Would I say things have changed a little bit? I probably would say you people might still make up something else or just still say their first date. But
Yeah.
if they told the truth, I would think people cared a lot less, like worried about that,
Yeah.
or it's far more commonplace.
I remember when I was like younger, like maybe 15, I had a friend who she was talking to this guy online and she came to me and she's just like, dude, I'm gonna go on like a blind date to the mall with this guy. And I was like, okay, like how do you know him? And she's just like, I met him online. And I immediately got like really
Yeah, yeah,
strange like
murdered.
vibes, right? And I was like, bro, what are you talking about? You can't just go and meet random people like by yourself. You're gonna get snatched. And she's like, oh, come with me, right? She showed me a picture of this guy. Oh my goodness. And then when we got there, I don't even know who, what, no. And it turned out to be like a really funny experience and like obviously something that bonded us as friends. But like, I do feel like back in the day, there was more of a like mystique, more a tendency to really actually be afraid of who you're going to meet and maybe have suspicions that these people are not who they say they are, and just like having that whole world be a little bit more just socially incredulous or like faulty, you know what I mean? um but today, this is very, very different. So let me just give you guys some statistics. Right now, the company that owns Match.com, which owns literally probably everything that you guys have touched, both free and paid, they earned about $450 million just domestic. So that's just in the United States, through their revenue. So this includes Plenty of Fish, OkCupid, Hinge, Tinder, and I think there's like one more that wasn't listed. And the only one they don't own is Bumble, right? So what what do you think changed in people that made them want to start engaging in these online communities in these ways and like maybe not be as ashamed? I'll start with Top Hat.
I think probably at its core, it's great to meet people you wouldn't otherwise. Like
Mm-hmm.
breaking down whatever kind of relationship, the full kind of spectrum of what people might be looking for in kind of every different way. So I would probably say that as this actually becomes a tool also for this, people would kind of get more relaxed, or as people are more relaxed maybe with what they're looking for, or this kind of, it's almost a filtering, isn't it? It's almost like searching, but if you're looking for maybe something, I don't know, quite special, maybe you have to look a lot, or it's a good way to look at different areas, or a wider kind of radar than you could if you just went to one place and looked around. I mean, it's almost kind of similar, to going into a place. I mean, if we think going into a pub or something, if there's say 15 people, 30 people, you would definitely see all of those quickly. 50 people, I imagine, or even like a nightclub or a gig, you would still look at a lot of people, for instance. So I think this is just quite similar, but we just do it kind of digitally, and it's obviously convenient with our phones. I mean, this is fine. It's not like we don't have overload. We can absorb a lot of these things. It won't be the only app people have. It'll be one of a dozen or a handful, isn't it? So probably this, just getting used to it being more of a network, more accessible, and kind of a fun thing to have. Maybe it's not taken as seriously. Maybe it is. I'm not sure, in different ways. Sorry to rabbit on, but now it's gone a little bit more almost professional, when we're seeing kind of high-end dating agencies, or people looking to kind of make profiles that are very professional or like well-tuned. I think probably it's moving more that way.
So like
If
more
you're very
modern,
serious,
more
if we're
modernized
talking,
use of what's going on and stuff.
so that's the kind of marriage one, or I want to do this. This is, I'm going to apply myself to a presentation, compared to maybe let's make a quick profile and just see who's out there or something. That would still be quite fun, or quite easy to do, quite straightforward, I
Yeah.
imagine.
Well, Hyral, what do you think? I mean, like, obviously, the digital landscape is the easy answer of what has changed, right? A lot more people have access to the internet. They have their own devices that you can use in your hand are smaller, and, you can carry things around. So, that's the very, obvious answer. But I'm really thinking deeply about this. What do you really think has changed?
I think that the basic sort of like the slow moving it out of the realm of the taboo and sort of into the light is probably pretty easy to explain, just the sense that the more sort of like a fringe positive examples who sort of sheepishly justify their sort of affection in quite reasonable ways, sort of like open it up to an increasingly large pool, and then so on and so forth until everybody's kind of gone. But I also think it's like the fun aspect that Top was talking about. Like, have you ever like sat there browsing through matches with a friend, kind of like showing, what do you reckon? What do you reckon? Oh, check out this guy, kind of thing, or whatever. Like that's something that I think sort of allows that to sort of like happen quicker, in a sense, because it becomes sort of like it's the same way that if you'd go to a pub and kind of like look at guys or girls and just be like, oh, she's cute, whatever else. Like you can do that on a much more efficient sort of scale than you could otherwise. And there was also like a thing in one of the articles that was posted earlier, just about, I think, the opening up of sort of like minority preferences, or people with minority preferences. So if you're like a gay, lesbian, or sort of bisexual, or if you live in a small town or something like that, and you're looking for like a long distance relationship. Now, like your opportunity is to find somebody who lives in the next state, next to nil, if you're in the analog modality of dating. But like in the modern sort of digital age, you can sort of explore options that are feasible for you. Like you could move overseas. You might not be particularly sort of like, entrenched in your sort of like place of residence or anything like that. Your job might be sort of something that you can, you have good sort of mobility in that regard. And that's something that I know a lot of couples who have moved quite great distances about to be together, and have quite storied romances from every sort of like a, impression that they give me. And that's something that would not have been in any way possible sort of prior to the
Yeah.
existence of online dating.
I think a little bit inside myself, I think that maybe it's possible that also people's willingness to search for something different has also heightened. And that while, really normal run-of-the-mill stuff, like you're saying, like stuff that's around your environment and things that you always interact with and you've always seen are there, you do see that random girl who, somewhere who is not from where you're from, and you want to know about her and she's interested in all the same things that you're interested in, and you just want to like pick her brain or vice versa or whatever.
I was going to say, the picking of the brain, one of the things that I've loved about online dating is the extent to which people proliferate their profiles with just like every interest they've ever had. And so I've
Mm-hmm.
honestly like found it useful as a resource of like, oh, this person has great taste. Like, oh, I don't recognize that band, I haven't read that book, sort of thing. But the rest of it I sort of like gel with.
Mm-hmm.
I've literally kind of like contacted people on dating sites just to ask them for more links on like some sort of weird kind of genre of music they're into or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So I want to give you guys a little bit of information here about the dating apps that are best. This is from reviews.com, and it's basically rating the best dating app overall to be OkCupid. It's free, which I think is a thing that should be distinguished when we're talking about dating apps and their both their favorability and their popularity. OkCupid, it focuses more on like casual stuff, but it literally runs the gambit of everything that you could possibly want there. It's viewed as the best dating app because it has the best matchmaking algorithms and the best like full content profiles. And I think it's really interesting if you've ever been on OkCupid. There's so many questions that you could possibly answer, and and all of those questions get you to a person who is more, I feel like, more fit to your brain than just like your body. Obviously we can bring up the I don't know, immensely fatalistic nature of Tinder. I feel like it's literally just like throw your body to the garbage and see what happens. Maybe
So I
you'll get
found
$100 in your hand. Maybe you'll get a hypodermic needle. I don't know. Yeah.
Tinder is the modern taboo, right? I have this whole rant where I'm like, does anybody, because there's a weird thing where people who use Tinder now are claiming that it has become something that isn't just about a fuck. Like you do sort of, oh, no, we talk to people. It's like a slow sort of conversation. It's like, I just make friends, whatever. But to my mind, it still sort of has this like smack of like, okay, so when you're telling your kids how you guys met, the story is going to be as follows, pretty much, really. Well, it's 3 a.m., hadn't got lucky at the club, jumped on the old Tinder. Your mom was 3Ks away. I was looking for a route. She was looking for a route. The rest is history. Like, it's even less romantic a modern romance tale than the usual sort of like, we made this decision while in, successive instances of being three sheets to the fucking wind kind of thing. So I don't know if that's actually sort of like valid, whether Tinder is sort of like moving into
Mm-hmm.
a less kind of like
Mm-hmm.
all about the root kind of like a thing or not. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, some other interesting facts are that the best long-term dating or relationships app is Match.com, but I do feel like this has a lot more to do with Match.com being a paid service. So I feel like when things are free, you can be more frivolous with your interactions and things. And I've never personally visited Match.com myself, but I do know that people who use this are really specifically looking for something. You know what I mean? It's not just like, let's have fun, or let I want to just see what the app is like. It's literally like, okay, I'm ready for this time in my life. I really want this to work and I'm willing to pay money for it. Um so usually people who are using this service are looking for like their ideal romantic partner, right? And you know it makes the bulk of the money for all of Match.com's company assets. And I think it's really funny because it's also kind of geared toward, I feel like, maybe older people. Like I don't really know personally too many young people who are like, yeah, let me just hit up that Match.com profile and like, I'm just gonna get my like one night stand for the night, and I'm
I think
paying
that's,
like
yeah.
$60 for however many months for this service. It is more people who are like, I don't have time and I'm serious and lonely. What do you
Yeah.
guys think?
No, that's dead on. Like, I think you can say that even further about sort of progressively about like elitesingles.com, which is even more sort of nuanced in the sense that it costs a pretty penny and you're literally just looking to meet other people who are like on six figures plus kind of thing. But yeah, I think the point you make about people who are so older as well, I think they typically know what they're looking for. They're sort of like, they usually have had a sort of relationship or two. There's a lot of divorcees and stuff like that, you know, back on the market. And so they're no shit. You know, they know the clock's ticking. I think they're looking their expectations and their sort of demands of a potential partner are less as well. I think after a few sort of like runs through the washing machine, you start to just go, look, I just want somebody nice. I just want somebody who I click with. I want somebody whose companionship I enjoy. You're not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily looking for that story romance anymore. I think that probably does result in sort of like a, you know, not having to mess around with people who, as you say, are just kind of it's free. I'll just jump on, have a look around, kind of thing as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know.
Yeah.
It goes back to the thing I said before with the kind of professional nature. I think as people get serious, they want kind of less time wasters, I guess. With any service, I presume. The other bit I would maybe think is this is only really a very, very quick kind of flash introduction, seeing a couple of images. We're really kind of flicking through and just finding almost a person, a type, and then we actually perhaps arrange to meet them. But that's all the app's going to give you, really. It is an introductory application. When you meet that person, you are actually going to have to say date them, interact and know how to do those things. So it does come down to this as well, opposed to rather than just like, oh, it's an app or it was a Tinder date. Like this has any any kind of guide over the relationship over that 1 second before you met.
I was going to say, speaking of first impressions, I would sort of argue that in some respects, the fact that you can, if you're relating this to like meeting somebody in a bar or something like that, sort of that chemistry test takes place basically just on, the extent to which you sort of like the cut of their jive, your natural chemistry with that person. I think like online dating, the fact that people have these massive profiles, it allows for you to select for a wider range of characteristics than you would otherwise sort of, be working from like in a pub or a club or something like that, which is kind of, I like the way that
Yeah, I
person's
was just
dead.
about to touch on that, a rise in diversity. So, all the studies that we looked at today in preparation for our broadcast tonight, all of them pretty much highlight that what these apps expressly do, and especially for the youth being like 18 to like 24, maybe max 30, right? It gives you the opportunity to interact with people of a different race, ethnicity, education level, political party, or income than you. And that exponentially, I guess it makes it so that it's kind of like a perpetual, cycle where you see the endeavor and you have opportunity and access to new endeavors, and then it makes it just in case those things don't work out, it lets you know that, hey, there's a wealth of opportunity here, and it doesn't just look like this or sound like this or drive this car or not a car at all. You know what I mean? And I think that that's a wonderful asset that's really come out of the stigma of online dating, and like being attached to things like the seedy place Craigslist. If you're too young to know what Craigslist is, do not Google it. It's weird. It's just, don't go there.
They
But
don't even have a personal section anymore.
I'm pretty sure they got rid of that because like weird
It's too
things happen
sketchy.
there. Yeah. But I really do think that when we're examining things like this, it's important to note like the human aspect of what we're doing, right? Like, yes, it is the digital world, and yes, it is this kind of like happenstance interaction, courting someone and dating and all of that. But there are these nuances that exist, that can totally shape you as a person, even without those people that you met, if they don't decide to be attached to you. And with that, we're going to move on to some Pew Research. Right now, I want to let all of our guests know, the listeners, and our people present in our Discord right now, that if you have comments, we have a comment section right above our chat. Feel free to discuss. And if we like some of your comments, we'll invite you to tell us your side of the story. All right. With that said, we'll be moving on. Okay. How you guys feeling? Is this a good temperature for you guys? I know it's so awkward. I feel like it's awkward sometimes to ask men about these kinds of things because you're just very straightforward. Even in some of the research I was looking at by gender, well, let's just say some people are there for something very specific and others are not. But I do thank you guys for your perspective and things. All right, so let's move on to a little bit of science, I guess, if that's what you want to call this. So before we were discussing some of the Pew Research statistics, and I won't give you too much number because, math. But if you really are interested in any of the statistics or the data that we're mentioning tonight, those will be available in the link below. As far as what this says, basically, couples meeting online tend to be more diverse, which we've already discussed. One thing that I found really interesting, though, is that same-sex couples were more likely to have met online at 37% versus only 11% of opposite-sex couples. What do you guys think about that? Not that I'm against it. I think it's fantastic too, but the perspective I'm interested in.
Well, more dates is good, first of all. If it just but this probably tells me it's just a good way to either meet people that are further apart or just people that are not as obviously presenting maybe what they're looking for or whatever it is. So any kind of way we can just quickly put anyone in touch with this same scenario must be awesome. Is that even proportional? That seems like really super high. What's the stat again?
So it was 37% of same-sex couples meeting online, and this is data from October 2018 versus 11% of opposite-sex couples.
I think that's pretty reasonable just in terms of what we're talking about. Like, if you cast a wider net, I think that's going to benefit people who are sort of more of a sort of like a dating minority in terms of what they're looking for, especially if you consider, like, if you're from a town or something like that, you're not perhaps out if you're sort of like a LBGT, whatever the fuck. You might not have like a gay club in your town or something like that. Like it's a way to meet people. Yeah. You feel safer. You feel sort of like more kind of assured. It's something that you can you don't have to like risk the upfront sort of, I don't know, concern of like approaching somebody in a pub and not knowing if they're kind of like sitting on your side of the fence or not, so to speak.
Yeah, so just to interrupt and make sure that our audience knows that Hyral is not indeed schizophrenic. He's actually responding to our podcast comment section that's located above our VC. If you come in, you'll find that out, and it's amazing. But
they are the voices in my head.
One of our users is basically alluding to the fact that the percentage might be higher because same-sex couples feel like finding a mate is safer online. And I don't know if a lot of people know this, but a lot of the reason why the internet has an explosion in 1995, and I'll get my fact checkers on this, fact checkers go, is because of same-sex people wanting to find normal people to meet and other things with, and for that really the internet to be a place of proliferation of their their ambiguity about their sexuality. And I think that's kind of like a thing that's not discussed, and it's kind of under the carpet as one of the reasons why the internet is both popular and successful at that time. But this is clear right now. So some of the other statistics were that um, just throughout time, the largest jumps in online dating usage by age come from the 18 to 24 and 45 to 64 age demographic. Okay, now I know that you guys are totally like, oh yeah, 18 to 24, they're like, freshly in college, they're trying to get it done, whatever. But like, can we look at the statistics of like the 45 to 64? Like, low key, this is your grandma. This is your grandpa. Okay, this is like old man Ned at the shop. Okay.
Mm, mm.
You know what I mean?
Swiping on the iPhone 4.
You know what I mean? Like what is it, what do you think the allure is for some people? Is it the same that they just want to access? It can be really different. I don't know if you guys know any old people, but they're not really looking for different experiences. um they're kind of like very much so stagnant in their ways, which is not a bad thing. It's just that's just how things work, and that's fine. But like, where where does the wonder come from? Is it just like their necessity to want to feel involved in the digital culture and not be left behind? Is it, they're feeling themselves and like 40 is the new
I would maybe
30? I
say
don't know.
these are kind of quite key windows when people are experiencing dating effectively, serious dating. Um, Maybe then you would kind of like pencil in maybe a marriage window, and then maybe you can pencil in the modern day second window where you need to reevaluate, are you good at dating and who is available to you at this time? Would that be something, or am I
Yeah. No, no,
sweeping?
no. Yeah. I think that's totally right on. What do you think, Hyral?
No, yeah, nothing. You pretty much hit the nail on the head. I don't have anything particular to add.
I think that like there's this maybe an unrecognized like sexual liberation that happens for older people as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
I have like aunts and uncles who are just like fucking crass, bro. like like they want to go out and my aunt wants to still wear really tight clothes and she looks
Okay.
great. I'm not
Mm.
gonna lie. She looks like literally like chick is doing yoga on the daily. She looks great, right? And then I'm just wondering, what am I doing? Like, if I'm going through your inbox in Tinder, God forbid you have Tinder. If I'm going through your inbox, what am I gonna see there? Because we know what we see in those. We know what we see in those inboxes, and might not. It might not be. I don't know. I don't see it as a bad thing, and I do feel like it does help them stay more connected to the social landscape, especially because everything is turning so expressly digital these days.
The general sort of point is the idea that the gay hookup apps are sort of like, I guess, usurping sort of like the role that sort of gay bars played. I'm kind of surprised by that a little bit. I would have thought there would be a pretty sort of like healthy synergy between the two with regards to, that would still be sort of like the end destination. I would have thought that the ability for sort of LGBTQ, Jesus, I've got to get that one right. Sort of like oriented people to kind of like be meeting easily and be more comfortable in their sort of like their engagement with the sort of dating process, that it would actually sort of result in more people kind of like rolling up at those places and having a ball kind of thing. That would still be like a dating destination, but there seems to be some sort of you know the suggestion is that there's a range of factors that might be sort of disrupting sort of the existence of gay bars and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of the existence of Grindr and China. But even if that is the case, is that necessarily a bad thing, or are they sort of like usurping the role of those because they're simply more effective at bringing people together in a fashion that sort of takes away what one of the kind of attractions of those places were, which is that it was a safe, comfortable, non-threatening place where you could be sure that you weren't going to come into any sort of like conflict on the basis of your sexuality. And so the existence of these apps kind of removes the need to necessarily go to a gay bar to stand a chance at meeting somebody, who shares your sort of like sexuality.
Yeah, I definitely think that the topic can't just be discussed like in a blip, right? It definitely needs more discovery. I don't want to misspeak on whatever does or doesn't exist. And honestly, any opinion that I would have on this is going to be biased because I live in a town that is super, super populated with people, and we have venues for every type of thing. So this is not something that I can experience, but I do want to thank Vanessa for your input, and it is very interesting. We'll do more investigation on this, and maybe it'll be an entire episode of its own. So right now, I'm going to ask that the people in our chat give us some questions or maybe some comments about what we've been discussing. And while you guys do that, I'm going to wrap up our Pew research and all of this data that we have, which is available in the box below, with the nitty gritty. The thing that everybody wanted, you've been waiting for it the entire time. Who's there for casual sex? Guess what? It's overwhelmingly men. Yes.
Oh, men. Oh, my goodness. Hyral, you owe me $5.
It is overwhelmingly men. And I don't say that to shame, of course, because, having sex is a very biological process and it's a necessity for your body. But I do think that, sometimes you can go in wanting one thing and maybe the search becomes a little bit tireless and you're just like, well, I mean, if you're offering. But I'm not a man, so that's why I'm really glad you guys are here so you can tell me your perspective honestly.
Well, what's your position on sort of like the romantic validity of the sort of, I guess, primary foundation or first sort of stopping point of your relationship being sexual? I mean, I know couples who are very much in love and have a reasonably sort of like, well-sustained relationship who absolutely ended up together just because they kept fucking, like they enjoyed each other's sexual sort of company and gradually sort of like the affection, the romance that perhaps they weren't even looking for sort of seeped in after a while and they just ended up together and, the rest was sort of history.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess like the attitude of I'm in it to, win it, so to speak, doesn't necessarily preclude the potential for romantic interaction to later develop. And I think with people who are potentially younger as well, that's kind of the way it goes. I mean, my aunt is somebody who uses dating apps a lot because she got divorced sort of quite late on in life and used online dating to basically, further her sort of romantic renaissance. But yeah, I just like she speaks about sort of like the way that she used to meet guys and sort of like get a boyfriend is she'd literally just go out to a bar. She'd, they'd just, she'd nail them on the second or third date and they'd just keep sleeping together until that was her boyfriend, and this is literally how like she met her husband of 20 years. Like every boyfriend she's ever had, she's met just by like, he was just a dude I slept with kind of thing, So the potential for that to be sort of like a valid sort of foundation for a relationship isn't, I don't think we should tar all men with sort of the rush of where we're just sort of sex fiends looking for a room. Like, we have hearts too, Harbinger.
Literally gave you the most pacifying response to that. It's good for your body and it's healthy.
I heard the judgment.
So is swimming, Hyral.
Oh yeah, so swimming. Well, at the top of that list is actually to find an exclusive romantic partner. So that is literally at the top of the list.
Oh, that's good.
One of the reasons that I found really interesting was like to find fun or something interesting to do. I don't really know what that means.
Or someone interesting to do.
My online dating experience is like really strange. I've told some of the users in our Discord, and you would know this if you come into our Discord, which we implore you to do. The link is available in the box below. I went on a blind date. Oh my god, please don't find me. I went on a blind date with a guy with a guy from OkCupid, and he was really nice. Before we met, and I was just like, I don't really have time to meet. I have school really often. He was like, "Oh, I'll come to you." And there's a park across the street from my school. I was like, "All right, that's cool. Just come." And then he's like, "Okay, I'll make us a picnic lunch, and it'll be really nice." And I was like, "Oh, that's really romantic. I really am interested in this." He shows up, and first of all, he's like, I don't know, I want to say like 5'5". And he looks very strangely happy, like somebody smacked a smile on his face. And he has this bag. It's like a normal grocery bag, all like lumpy. And he's just like, "Yeah, let's have lunch." And I'm just like, "Oh, you know what? I'm not going to judge this. I'm going to just keep an open mind." I sat down, and he pulls out these sandwiches. And the sandwiches inside had like, normal sandwich stuff, lettuce, tomato, some sort of meat product, and cheese. And then there was like cream cheese. And I was just like, "What is this?" "What is this?" And he's just like, "Oh, I didn't have any mayonnaise." I just said it to use the cream cheese. It literally, I was just like, I looked at him in the eyes, and I really believe that this was motivations of somebody who was detached from stuff. And I was just like, I need to get out of here, like, as soon as I can.
Oh,
And he's
goodness.
just like, "Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was like a deal breaker. Like, what is wrong with you? No, who puts sour cream
No.
on a sandwich?"
I'm not worried about this. I'm just worried about if he actually
cheese.
did have mayo, everything's fine. You may be still going out, is effectively what you're saying.
If it was like a joke, right? If he was just like, "Haha, I bought you joke food," I probably would have been dating him. But it was not a joke.
Can I just take this
Oh,
opportunity
Fisher
to
Price
say that
food would be so fun.
if this is sounding familiar, there will be a box with Harbinger's details. If you'd like a second chance, if this is you,
No,
just
please.
write in, and we'll settle up. We'll make it.
I have definitely
Just lay off the cream cheese. Maybe hummus.
I hate you both. I want to recite one of the comments from our podcast member, Princess Celine Cat. "I'm in my early 40s. I grew up with the internet. I was in high school in 1995. I don't currently use dating apps, but I was in the first generation who did, and it was scandalous. I am not as old as you seem to imply." I would really like to hear from you, Celine. I'm very interested in your perspective, and I wouldn't really mind hearing all the scandal and very quick tidbits if you are willing to share with us. Another comment is from Luna, and it says, "Oh, it's cute though. Poor guy. Cream cheese is good on a sandwich. Get out of here. What's wrong with you? Are you related?"
Strictly bagels.
No, I'm just kidding. I love Luna. She's been here for
Check the warnings.
She just got here. Dare said, "It's because most people on Discord are fetuses." I don't know how much longer I'm going to be reading these comment sections.
Are we into anecdote hour?
Hour. So just one more comment from Vanessa. She says, "Just wanted to comment on Harbinger's expectation of hookups. I find this in college when the problem is young women who enter relationships at universities that are friendly, intimate. They're fun, but they're not binding arrangement, and it's not a prelude to marriage. And generally, when exam time comes around, the guys get a bit serious and it all stops. And I've observed forms that they absolutely fall apart." I feel
this is
like
what Facebook is, really. This is obviously the university dating scene.
But I do think that that's really interesting, that the pressures of, your college schoolwork will, decide whether or not you want to be engaged in such, such things. But maybe the dating app makes it easier for you to still have that like emotional connection. And I know that this is probably likely very true for the medium that we're currently in, Discord, where it's not a dating app. This is a gaming app. However, you meet people and, there's thousands of servers or whatever. You get attached and you spend a whole bunch of time, and they offer you this companionship that you don't really have to exert a lot of physical energy for. So you can fit it into things that you're doing in your daily life that you need to get done. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can be looking for romance like at work, just like scanning through matches and stuff like that. I mean, that's certainly what my aunt did. She's a primary school teacher and spent most of it looking for like 50-year-olds to fucks.
If we're honest, what these things really actually do is give us more opportunity to connect, while simultaneously, I think, stealing more opportunities to connect. And this is a conversation I feel is had in many different ways about many different things that involve digital mediums. But, when we're talking about the warm touch of somebody's hands, or how your body is excited when you see someone's eyes alive for the first time. There are not very many yet, I guess, electronic things that can mirror this, but I do think it makes it easier for the heart connection or the mind connection to be prominent. So that when you do get to the point where it's, either love at first sight or, whatever comes to you, you'll be connected in so many more ways than just that. And with that, I am sad to tell you that this is the end of our podcast for the night. I want to thank our special guest, Princess Celine Cat, for giving us her perspective on what things are going down back in the 90s. And I want to give a very special thanks to both Hyral and TopHat for joining me this evening. We will be back shortly with new topics for you. We hope you are grossly unsatisfied so that you will return to us soon as we post it.